Our team has uncovered a way to continue to drive a wow experience, but to do it at scale really, and offer a lot more through automation and AI that allows that personal touch through the journey, but to do it in an automated way, and then allow for live touch points when it makes sense.
Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on your notifications. Hello, my customer success friends. Irit Eizips here for CSM Practice, the customer success consulting firm. Today, we're going to talk about how to deliver a wow experience to your smaller customer base at scale and using a non-CSM managed model that allows you to not only scale your operations, but increase your customer experience. And we have the awesome team from Glint, who's also been acquired by LinkedIn back in 2018. Hello, ladies. Can we go through a quick introduction, just your name, your role at the company?
Mary Poppen, I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Glint. So we run everything post-sale, end-to-end customer journey.
Hi, everybody. This is 𝘧𝘪𝘳𝘧𝘪𝘳𝘧. I'm a member of Mary's team, Director of Customer Success at Glint, and I'm really responsible for CS delivery across our regions.
Hi, I'm 𝘧𝘪𝘳𝘧𝘪𝘳, Customer Success Operations Manager at Glint. Been around for 2 years.
And I'm Valerie 𝘾𝙪𝙭𝘦𝘬𝘕𝑚, partner along with 𝘬𝑚, Customer Success Operations, and work really closely with Mary and 𝘧𝘪𝘳𝘧𝘪𝘳 here to create processes that work for our teams.
Excellent. Now, this topic is so important because now so many companies struggling to, deal with customer requests and changes. These adjustment to the strategy and making things much more scalable is super important, especially as the revenue structure might change for a lot of the SaaS organizations. This is why I wanted to have you guys in for this session to share, how did you build out a scalable model for Glint? Mary, what does scale and agility really mean for Glint?
As we all know, customers really gravitate toward companies that treat them like more than just a number, right? And for Glint, our main goal is to build customer intimacy with our customers. What customer intimacy really means, though, is knowing your customer better than anyone else, right? It's identifying what they need, when they need it, before they even know they need it sometimes. And this, for us, ties into our mission, which is to deliver a wow experience to our customers. So the wow comes in because every customer is different and every customer needs something different at different times. And so our team is really tasked to continue to create this wow experience. Historically, that was really only possible when you would put a person in a place to be able to drive that wow experience. A CSM, for example, would be the one that would be the point of contact and be able to drive that. Our team has uncovered a way to continue to drive a wow experience, but to do it at scale really, and offer a lot more through automation and AI that allows that personal touch through the journey, but to do it in an automated way, and then allow for live touch points when it makes sense.
How many customers are we talking about that you needed to address? Because obviously you don't have 50 customers, because then you could just do a high touch model. Is it hundreds of customers that you were trying to develop this for, thousands of customers?
After we got to 500 customers, we recognized that we just couldn't continue to build our team with the same ratio as we were delivering for that customer base with a really white glove treatment. And so it was really at that point that we decided we had to step back and take a look at what we could do by segment, but also just across the entire journey and delivery experience. And so one of the things we did, you could probably see this slide, is establish a sequence of events that needed to happen in order to really get scale across people, process, and systems. And that was really setting the foundation. And part of that is the journey mapping is so critical to understand those touch points and the key milestones with customers. And that's how you identify what is really going to be a wow experience. And you can deliver that with white glove, but the real question for scale is, what can you deliver with high quality, in an automated way. And so we started with the journey mapping and made sure that we had the right skill set on our team as well to deliver the right pieces at the right time. And then we moved into operationalizing our function, really establishing key measures and systems that were going to allow us to be able to track the health of our customers, those who weren't directly managed by a CSM. That is a critical part of our scale delivery. And then the last piece is once you get those in place, you can have a seat at the table and be the voice of the customer and change the mindset of the organization with putting the customer first, because you've now built this foundation, you've got all this great data, and you can bring that forward to other functions to take accountability. And now you've got it for not only the customers who you are serving, with a bit more white glove, but you've got this scaled model that you can deliver effectively across thousands of customers.
So, Steph, what was the key in implementing this scalable model? What did you need to change, or you felt like this was part of the key thing in the strategy that you almost needed to immediately tackle?
Yeah, I think Mary touched on this a little bit, but a lot of it was around the realization of the growth of our customer base. When we started recognizing that we were on pace to have hundreds of customers, and then also beyond that, we wanted to set a foundation for thousands of customers, right? So it was really important for us to gain an understanding of our customer journey every step of the way that our customers are engaging with us. At what points in that journey could we ingest as much value as possible? And then can we take the person out of the mix for some of those delivery angles? Can we actually have something automated? Can we give them the same experience, right, through some sort of communication or collateral? Going back to this, and I think our team will reference this a couple of times today, but really understanding the journey that our customers go through, what's important to them at each phase of that journey, recognizing that large or small, regardless of the size of the customer, they're going to want value along the customer journey, and then recognizing that parts of the journey are best to be delivered by person and parts can be delivered through different means. But it really was that understanding of end to end, what do we expect our customers to go through along their journey.
And 𝘬𝘱, you were essential in just taking that vision and actually creating these different elements to make that strategy happen. Can you tell me, how does the scalable model actually work? What are the key components here that make it so successful for Glint?
Yeah, sure. So we focused on three main operational magic. On the very first component, Steph and Mary touched on it, is journey mapping, right? Mm-hmm. Understanding the customer journey and just being able to identify these key moments of truths or aha moments is vital at the start. This creates the customer intimacy story that Mary talked about and the relationship from initial engagement. The second is success plans. We've created internal and customer-facing CSM processes by creating success plans with objectives and call to actions, which I'll refer to as CTAs. So these CTAs all have clearly defined tasks and milestones with each objective. These processes help our CSMs track activities and review their customers' key goals and business outcomes. The third one are playbooks. So in CSOps, our goal is to standardize best practices across the entire CS org. This creates a level playing field for both ambitious new hires and rockstar veterans, right? So by using playbooks, we're able to revise best practices based on all of the lessons learned. This helps us evolve our internal and customer-facing processes to always #improving.
Val, you were also collaborating with 𝘬𝘱 to actually implement this, and it's one thing to design all these documents and calls to action and playbooks, and it's another thing to actually have the team embrace them and adopt them. And not only the team itself, other internal stakeholders from other teams to better understand what are these processes all about and how to collaborate. And then of course the customers, they need to readjust and understand what is the benefit of all these new resources that are now available for them. Can you share a little bit on how did you address change management for a successful adoption of this new non-CSM managed model? Because you had to transition clients from having a dedicated CSM, a personal CSM, to a CSM managed engagement model?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one that we gave a lot of thought and a lot of different people contributed to. So when creating the overall vision and the messaging for a non-CSM managed model, we involved our internal stakeholders and executives really early on, just to ensure organizational alignment and that multiple perspectives were being captured in the messaging. We really put a large emphasis on change management, like you said. And I think it's really important to first note that we were ready to adapt both our model and our messaging based on the feedback from our customers and our internal employees through a designed closed loop iteration process. When actually communicating the shift externally from a one-to-one to a pooled model, we had to make sure that we were wearing the hat of the customer and that we were writing from that perspective as well. And that really allowed us to highlight the benefits that the customer was going to be receiving in the shift and get in front of any concerns that they might have as well. So some examples I remember from our communication, it's centered around the fact that the customer was now going to have more than one resource able to assist them when they needed it. They could collaborate with their peers directly on our community for best practice sharing. And that all of this was going to be coupled with Glint platform enhancements that empowered our customers to take a lot more control and ownership over their Glint processes. We did emphasize that nothing was going to shift in the way that Glint supported their success. Really, only the resources themselves were shifting in order to provide them the tools that they needed when they needed them. And, this messaging came from our CCO, Mary, and it was overwhelmingly well received.
So Mary, how did you know it was well received? How do you manage to get customer feedback in general when you don't have a CSM that manages that account?
We contemplated long and hard about the messaging, knowing that we needed to put all of the value proposition from the customer perspective. But even doing that, it was a really big change for at least a quarter of our customer base. We planned, really well in advance, I think, giving a long runway to the communication and giving it time to soak in and for customers to ask questions. And then to see the value of the resources and the new direction that we were going, right? And then we implemented a closed loop feedback approach. So across the journey, we identified key areas that we would be able to send surveys and to have live touch points and check-ins to really see what kind of experience they were having. And we took the feedback from both the surveys and the live check-ins, and we incorporated that back into our programs. So we continuously look to improve, but I would say the combination of the surveys with the live check-ins have given us, an incredible opportunity to not only listen to our customers directly, but find trends and highlights and incorporate that back into our program to continuously make it better.
So Tui, with such a large customer base, getting a non-CSM touch model, you must be using data to gauge customer health. Can you tell me a little bit about your health score for a low touch approach?
Yeah, definitely. So from an operations perspective, we basically needed to solve for some limitations in our ability to scale, right? So therefore, we executed on an automated health score calculation. We just needed a way to proactively monitor all of our customers' health. So we solved for this by identifying and connecting our own customer data into a solution called Gainsight. When these data were displayed on a dashboard, the data provides us a centralized view into our customers' usage and adoption. We're also able to calculate a health score based on CSAT and NPS ratings, and even our support tickets. We can drill into the actual details to give us historical snapshots of when a health score component actually started to decline. These are just some of the components we use to configure an automated calculated health scorecard. This gave us the customer visibility to proactively take the proper next steps if needed.
Steph, let's say you already have the health score, and let's say that you see some trends of customers that are in red or even in yellow or green. How do you follow up on these scores? Because there's so many customers, and so how do you deal with that?
One thing that was really important to us in building this model was ensuring that we had solid representation across roles within our pooled delivery team. So for example, we had technical support representatives, the people that were managing cases that are coming through. We have technical team members that are a bit more senior to handle complex issues. And then we also had CSMs kind of sitting behind this model. So for example, if we were to recognize a health score indicating risk, either red or even yellow, we actually have a manager that's overseeing the dashboards that were referenced that can actually determine when to proactively engage. And in those cases, we would likely take a CSM that sits within that pooled delivery model, have them proactively reach out to the customer and start an engagement around what they're experiencing, what they might need from Glint. Our goal is always to engage before they need us, right? Find them before that they know that they need something additional. And that was really key when we talk about this pooled model, to know that it was so much more than pooled delivery. When we were talking previously about how we communicated the model, one important thing to mention is that our customers don't know of this as a pooled model, right? We were very purposeful to make sure that we communicated that this is your Glint team to provide, success and value. Behind the scenes, our goal is to always engage the right resource proactively to create the wow experience for our customer without them knowing that they're part of this kind of pooled model, right? It's pooled is definitely an internal term, but that's what allows us, the manager oversight, the dashboarding, and then the automated health scores allow us to know when to proactively engage.
What is your CSM ratio for this non-CSM? Because you need to have enough to have the right customer experience, but if you have too many, then you're back into high touch. What is the right amount and how did you arrive to that? Did you have like multiple iterations until you got to that magic number?
Short answer, yes, we had multiple iterations. We still are. We actually have, for headcount planning purposes, even though to Steph's point, it's a pooled model, we still do plan a one-to-many portfolio just so we make sure we have enough coverage and, right, so we can make that the right headcount ask. Right now, the model's about 50-1. In the next 6 months, we hope to get closer to 500-1.
And when you just launched it, did you launch it at 1-50 or lower or higher?
We launched, yeah, great question. We actually launched it closer to 1-30 to make sure that we were in a good place to respond. We also had backup resources ready to jump in if customers needed help and a bit more hand-holding while we made the transition. We actually were really quickly able to get to the 1-50, I'm pleased to say. So I think, again, it was the planning, the overly communicating internally and externally. And then I think with the journey mapping, just being prepared for those key points that our customers were going to need more help.
And just to put everything in perspectives for those who watch the video, these same customers used to have a much higher touch ratio. So if before they might have been like a 1-10 or 1-15 or 1-20, and then you increased it to 1-30 and then to 1-50. So essentially you were taking a risk. And if it wasn't for that change management that you walked us just through it and the overly communicating and making sure that the customers really feel hugged during that process, this would not necessarily been a success.
That's exactly right. The other comment I wanted to make to Steph's point about the pooled model is to be really careful when you communicate internally to sales or other teams, because some of those words do stick and make it out externally. And so just be really thoughtful about the internal communications and defining and explaining, what's changing and what things mean and what should be communicated to customers.
That's such a good point, Mary. This was like a later learning for us where we recognized that our sales team was kind of going out and showing customers that we were purposely targeting to this model, showing them the breadth of services that they could have. We learned pretty late that we should actually build a data sheet around this model, a very simple data sheet that sold the key points of why we were doing it and what was in it for them, and only show that to the customers that we're targeting for this model, because it really allowed them to have a distraction-free view of how we would service them. And that's, again, for newer customers that would move right into this model. We took a different approach when we were scaling customers back, but for new customers, it was really important for us to show them the value from day one.
If you were to advise a customer success executive that's ready to embark on a scalable model, how many team members do they actually need to pull this off just to get the strategy executed, developed, Do they need a customer empowerment team? How many people do they need on that team? Do they need a customer success operations team? What does that team do after that the strategy is launched? And what other teams did you collaborate with? Was it the marketing team, the sales team? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Whenever you're creating or revamping a process, you have to make it a cross-functional effort. You can't work in a silo. So for example, we could have created the most beautiful messaging. We could have created a journey for our customers from our own perspectives, but without customer empowerment, building out that customer community and making sure that it resonated with our customers, and without engineering, dedicating the time and resources necessary to make our product a little bit more self-serve to enable our customers to own their process, that messaging would have fallen on deaf ears. So I think it's really important for a change management perspective, from creating a process that is going to resonate externally, that you have as many voices part of that design as you can, and that the whole company is bought in to the business value that it's going to bring.
Okay, so it sounds like you collaborated with the product team to make sure that the application is easy to use. Anybody else? Did you work with the marketing team to create the collaterals, or is that something that the CS Ops team and the customer empowerment team helped?
Yeah. We definitely sourced the content ourselves. So we started with our view of how we would deliver and how we would prove impact. And then we did rely a little bit in the early days on some of our marketing friends, specifically for the pieces of it that were kind of prospect facing, right? The things that we talked about that would touch the market. We wanted to make sure that we had the right angle on that documentation. Another piece too, when we're talking cross-functionally, is we do have a very solid product partnership as well. So part of this is also when we're getting feedback from this pooled model on these customers, making sure that we have that liaison and that relationship with products so that we can surface things that potentially need to be handled in the platform, not necessarily through how we're delivering, right, or our delivery process. So if something, for example, is difficult for customers to do on their own, that may be something that we don't tackle from a CS operations or process perspective, but rather we take that feedback to product and we say, we need to up the self-serve nature of this, portion of the platform. So I would highly recommend as well strengthening the bonds between some of these internal teams, because that played a very key role in our ability to execute.
How many people do you need in the customer empowerment team? Do you decide the FTE per account, per customer, or is it just like, well, there's a breadth of work regardless of how many customers there are, so we need at least 2? Like, how do you decide the team?
It would be great if we had like a ratio. If you have this many customers, you have this many resources. I think the best approach and way to think about it is you can scale with what you have today. So if you think about assigning one resource to be the owner of defining the customer journey as a first step, and really breaking out, what does the delivery look like today? Where's the redundancy? What's critical in terms of driving customer value and customer satisfaction? And where are those live touch points needed versus where you could automate, right? If you had a single resource on point to do that and get input from others, that is a great starting point. And that's actually going to inform what resources from there you have already on your team that you can put into a scaled model and start to deliver some of the scale, right? And then you can decide what do you want to add on. I think having a community, having a gain site or a customer health system, having training and a training catalog and things like that are all advanced pieces that come from defining that journey and just starting there, right? Yeah. And then you can add on the pieces as you have budget and as you have time. But I think if you try to bite off too much, I think if we had tried to roll everything out right away, you potentially get frozen, right? Because you're taking on too much change, you're rolling out too much change to the customer wants to know what's really working and what's priority.
Got it. So given a look back to what you've done, Mary, and where should companies start when they're thinking about a scalable model? Is it with the data and health score, or some maybe simpler things like an online community and premium support or 24/7 support?
I think it all starts with the journey mapping. And the next piece is identifying where you can replace live interaction with one-to-many sessions like webinars and communications. And that's where I'd recommend as a foundation to start. The next piece is that health score. So outside of sentiment, where you could send a quick survey or have a CSM touch base, that's one way to get at the sentiment. But once you can add on things like actual adoption or engagement with the product, or once you roll out a community, engagement in the community, you now have this view of customer health that is based on actual behavior and activity than it is sentiment, the feeling you get that a customer is healthy or not. But again, those are things that should build over time as you add to your programs.
Awesome. Ladies, you were amazing. I've learned so much, and I'm sure anybody that's watching this video would find this extremely informative and inspiring to get their scalable model up and running. I want to thank the Glint team for being so glamorous and generous with their time today. Have a successful customer success strategy post-COVID-19, and I'll see you all at the next video.